if you're an individual trainer and you're not doing this, you're ultimately going to miss out. I mean, I'm working with Lifetime Fitness right now to look at rolling out Morpheus to their 1.2 million members and their 4,000 plus trainers. I mean, this is already happening. This is not something that's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. So if you're, sitting there and you have nothing, you have no technology, you don't know how to use it, the trainer down the street is using Morpheus and then some other platform, and they can tell people all this information, you're going to lose clients.
Hey, fitness fans, welcome back to the Future of Fitness podcast and interview series. This is episode number 88. I am your host, Eric Malzone, and today's guest is Joel Jamieson. So Joel, you can find out more about Joel at 8 Weeks Out, trainwithmorpheus.com, a lot of different areas. He does a more detailed biography on himself during the episode, but he is very well known in the fitness community, especially well known in the world of combat sports. So he is a wealth of knowledge. We geek out on energy systems. We talk about the future of HRV, heart rate variability. He is one of the early adopters with that technology, and he tells us where it's going, what you need to know about it, and what to do about it. And I did order his Train with Morpheus HRV unit. I like it. I do. It's the best one I've had so far, and I've tried a lot of them. I have a bin of them that are kind of I've used and tossed aside, but this one I still use. So it's a great tech, and I urge you to check it out and just get used to it, because it's going to be commonplace within our industry for sure in the next 5-10 years, if it isn't already. So yeah, go check it out. Before we get into the episode, got to talk to you about the Fitness Accelerator. So I think equal parts incubator, mastermind, and networking group. It is the fastest growing network of fitness professionals and entrepreneurs that you've never heard of, because it's not on social media. That's right. We're not on social. We have built out a Slack community that is based on intent. People who go there to network, people who go there to ask questions, share knowledge, and all these things. And it's not social because, let's be honest, social media is too cluttered. It is too distracting. And overall, for me personally, it's just a little annoying now. So we wanted to get off social, get out of Facebook groups, get out of LinkedIn groups, things like that, and get into a group where business actually gets done and connections are made. So go check it out. It's fitnessprofessionalonline.com/fit accelerator. Again, that's fitnessprofessionalonline.com/fit accelerator. Get 2 weeks on me. We're offering 2-week trials for the community. Get in, see what it's all about, no risk for 2 weeks, and go from there. So without further ado, let's get on to episode number 88 with Joel Jamieson. This is a audio only podcast. We did not have video for this recording. So those of you who are on YouTube, sorry about that. Yeah, here we go. Hey, Joel Jamieson, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. We, like always, I always start talking to people and they just get this great nugget, and then I realize I'm not recording. So we're recording now. So I know who you are. I've been following a little bit, your expertise within the combat arts and the training that you do there with energy systems. You're one of the early adopters in HRV, a lot of things. But if you can, maybe just give people who don't know who you are, Joel, just a background on what you do and what you've done and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time in the industry, about 15, 16 years now, maybe a little more than that, actually. I started a gym back in 2003 called Amazon Athletics, and started training combat athletes pretty quickly, and worked with a lot of top-level UFC and international fighters. Did that for a number of years, and then realized there was a need for conditioning and teaching people how to get in better shape. So I created an online site, 8weeksout.com, started spreading the word about conditioning, and that grew into a big online enterprise for me. At the same time, I'd also been on the technology side. I developed a product called BioForce HRV back in 2011, 12, which is really one of the kind of the early fitness technology software pieces out there, and spent quite a few years building that, and had a lot of teams and organizations, Navy SEALs, different government organizations around the world using that. Created a newer platform called Morpheus a few months ago, or a little bit less than a year ago. I've done stuff with a lot of consulting, worked with a company called Lifetime Fitness, is one of the biggest gym chains in the US, and helped them essentially build out a lot of their personal trainer education. So I've done a lot of different things, from training fighters to, like I said, working with giant corporations, to developing technology, building an online business, building a brick and mortar business of done a lot of different things in the industry over the years.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's so cool. And so when did you start your online business? Around what year?
2008 or 2009, I started 8 Weeks Out,
Okay.
and really just had made a post on a big internet forum for MMA conditioning, and there was a lot of interest. I got a huge thread going of something, a few 100,000 people were reading these posts about MMA conditioning. And at the time, MMA was really growing rapidly, and I just realized there was a big void in the marketplace. Nobody was really writing or talking about MMA conditioning, and there was a lot of misinformation out there, and people wanted to understand how to get in shape for combat sports or how to get in shape for different sports in general. So I wrote a book called Ultimate MMA Conditioning, and that really was my launch off point. And literally, I wrote that 2009, and we're still selling 1,000+ copies a year of that right now with very little actual promotion of that book. So it was just a really big eye opener. I think it just spoke to the fact that there was a lot of people writing about strength and not really a lot of people writing about conditioning in a practical way. And I would say that's still the case. You can type in strength or power or bodybuilding or build muscle or lose fat in Google, and you can get a bazillion results. But if you look at conditioning, there's really not that many people trying to write about conditioning in a practical, easy to understand way. That's not just go do a bunch of intervals. And I've always approached things from a bit more scientific standpoint than that. And so, I found a good audience.
Yeah. One of our mutual friend James Fitzgerald, I went through all of his training too and worked with him for a long time. And the thing that I geeked out the most in working with him, because I know he geeks out on as well, is just energy systems and how very little people within the fitness profession actually educate themselves. Strength, like you said, is such a big focus. Fat loss, of course, because that's what the general population needs. But how did you stumble, or did you stumble into energy system training and becoming, one of the leading minds in that area?
It was pretty out of necessity, to be honest with you, because I came up from a strength background like most strength coaches do as well, and worked primarily football. But then I started working with the combat athletes, and one of my first athletes was fighting a big fight in K1 over in Japan, and I really didn't know much about energy systems at the time, to be honest with you. Like I said, I had a strength background, but really what happened is I started training with these guys just to understand the sport better. If I was going to start training these guys, I wanted to understand what I was getting myself into and what their needs were. So I started training with them, and I was, massively stronger than they were. But within 30 or 40 seconds, I was just face down the mat getting my ass kicked. And it was a real eye opener that there's a whole other dimension to fitness here that I wasn't very good at. And, you realize basically if you're going to train these guys, the last thing you want to do is watch them gas out in the fight and know that it was your fault because you didn't know anything about energy systems. So I just dug in and started learning everything I could. Kept trying the different methods on myself, talked to anybody I could find that was working the fighters, and really just spent years trying to understand how all the pieces fit together and how to get people ready to fight and how to get people ready to perform in other areas. So like I said, it was pure necessity. If I hadn't started training combat athletes, I don't know that I would have ever gone that direction. But when someone's counting on you to get them in shape, and energy systems are a big part of that, you got to dive in and learn as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to ask this question in a way that's most beneficial to the people listening. But when we talk about energy systems, Joel, anaerobic versus aerobic or lactate, how do you, with taking a complex topic, how do you boil it down so it would intrigue somebody to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to understand is really energy systems are more than just performance. It's at the heart of life, because every single cell of your body from the day you're born until the day you die is dependent and reliant on energy. So when we talk about energy systems, really what we're talking about is just metabolism. How does your body take the food that you eat and turn it into the energy you need to survive or walk around or punch somebody in the face or run a mile or whatever the case may be? And really basically what you find, and what's most interesting about it, is just kind of how the body was designed to function in a variety of different capacities, but also the trade-offs that are inherently part of that. So you realize, there's a reason that we can't run, a mile at the same speed that we can run 100 meters, right? We can't even run 100 meters at the same speed we could run 30 meters or 50 meters. So just understanding kind of how all these pieces fit together is a super fascinating thing, because again, it's not just about performance; it's at the heart of how our bodies are designed to function and stay alive. So it's really just kind of understanding what the pieces are involved, how they all fit together. And for the reason that people, I wouldn't say struggle, but find conditioning and energy systems more challenging, it's just there's a lot of moving parts. I mean,
Yeah.
Strength is central nervous system function and big muscles, and that's a big piece of it, and some connective tissue. But you know, movement and mechanics and energy system and conditioning is all these different variables and all these different factors that are put together. So it's anybody who's fascinated by just how the human body works is going to love digging into energy systems and movements and all this stuff, because there's so many layers you can peel back one step at a time. And fundamentally, the more you can understand that, the more everything else fits together. Because look at it this way, your strength and your power, which is what everyone loves so much, well,
Yeah.
that's driven by energy systems. The muscles don't fire themselves. They all rely on energy to do that. So, whatever area of fitness you're talking about, energy systems is a huge component of it. There's no area of fitness that doesn't involve energy systems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I kind of look at, I've never coached a combat sport athlete, but I've coached a lot of CrossFit people, and I see them similar. Obviously many differences, but similar in the fact that it's like, if you're training somebody for, endurance sports, you can really focus on heart rate training, right? But for, at least speaking from CrossFit, is like, that doesn't work. Like, what metrics do you gather from a CrossFit athlete? Because let's just put a simple workout. Let's say it's an 8-minute AMRAP with heavy deadlifts, burpees, and a salt bike. Like, you, as knowing what you know about energy systems, that's just a hot mess of metrics, right? Like, how do you train? What metrics do you look at to train somebody for that particular workout? Because, obviously if they get on the assault bike and they burn into lactate, right, that's going to be a big issue going into all the energy systems, and then, strength is, deadlifts are going to be absolute power, but plus muscle endurance. It just turns very confusing. And I think it's really hard to boil it down into simple terms that athletes can understand.
Yeah, I mean, what it always comes down to is just this trade-off, right? The more strength and power you produce, the less the lower the duration you can produce it for. Again, that's just kind of how the body was designed. So you have to kind of look at where's the balance, right? If I make somebody bigger and stronger, I'm ultimately going to compromise their ability to be, strong for a long period of time. So it's about finding each person's balancing point of the right combination of strength and endurance, and then making sure that, as they progress and develop, they're continuing to achieve that balance. And the other thing people forget about is a lot of it's just technique and control and pacing, and there's a huge mental performance side to this. Fitness is one thing. I mean, you can look at two athletes that have very similar fitness levels, but they might not perform the same, and that's because, just because you're capable of the energy production doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use it effectively. So, I think in the last couple of years, that's a big area I've dived into is teaching people how to control their energy output and teach people how to manage and pace and do all these things that are a huge part of conditioning. That, again, I look at fitness as one half, and I look at the skill of conditioning as the other half. Anytime you're talking about combat sports or CrossFit or anything where there's this huge demand, this huge need for both strength, power, and endurance, it's about teaching people how to execute and how to use their energy as effectively and efficiently as possible. Because if you don't, you're going to burn yourself out and pay the price, even though your fitness might have been good. You didn't have the skill it takes to manage it properly.
Yeah. Interesting. I love what you just said, man. I think you may just name the episode too, the skill of conditioning, right? Once again, going through my lens of working with CrossFit athletes is, they always, so many times they thought, well, I just got to go right out of the gate super hard, right? But then we started coming across, probably 5 years ago that, like, I call it pacing is the new kipping. Even if it's a 3-minute workout, you still got to find pacing and understanding how you, particularly as the individual, approaches that workout. And it's a skill, man. It's crazy. I mean, you have to get a feel for it. You have to understand the science of it, but ultimately it's just how you feel, right?
It's being able, I call it dynamic energy control. It's basically understanding how to conserve and how to control and how to expend and when to expend your own energy. In combat sports, I would say it's even more complicated because you're dealing with an opponent and you're dealing with, each person essentially has to outsmart the other one, not just in terms of skill set, but in terms of energy, if you're going to win the conditioning battle. So, any sport like that, I think you can't neglect the skill aspect of conditioning. I would say it's more than just pacing. It's literally understanding, how and when to push and when to relax and when to rest and how to just conserve and manage. And it's like I said, it's a skill set that needs to be taught. It's not something that just people inherently figure out. And a lot of people, don't figure it out, even though their fitness levels are relatively good. They just don't understand how to put those pieces together. And that's got to be coached and taught as well.
Yeah. Joel, in your opinion, is there any sport more complex than combat sports to train people for?
No, not really. I mean, combat sports are complex because there's so many different skills, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at football or basketball or different sports, the skill sets are relatively predefined. You have to be able to dribble, you have to be able to shoot, or you have to be able to pass the ball or catch the ball or whatever. But MMA, it's like playing 5 different sports or 5 different well, actually, it's 5 different sports. It's, boxing, it's kickboxing, it's grappling, it's wrestling, it's submission. There's all these different sports that have fairly unrelated skills. I mean, the groundwork has nothing really in common from a skill standpoint from stand up, and even some of the transition areas are their own sport. So there's a lot of skills involved. B, there's this huge demand for both strength, power, and endurance, which is challenging. And then C, you're talking about complete unpredictability. The fight could go 30 seconds, it could go 25 minutes. There's all these unknown variables of every single fight, and every opponent's got a different style you have to prepare for. So there's just a huge number of variables and a huge number of complicating factors that make it a challenging sport to train for. And the early days were just that. They were very early and people trying to figure it out. I think people have gotten better at it over the years. You definitely don't see nearly as many people gassing out now as you used to, but a lot of that's because people have just gotten better at training and pacing and realizing the limitations of what they can and can't do. So it's been fascinating because I've been training those guys since about 2003, 2004 now. So it's been it's been an interesting journey to watch the sport progress and grow and turn into what it is now.
Yeah. So my first thought is like, with all these complexities, man, do you have like you must have some kind of systems in place? I mean, it's so case by case, but like, how do you assess an athlete just to start? Like, what does that look like? How long does it take? How many sessions does it take? Or is it something that you can just kind of eyeball now due to your skill?
No, I mean, it's both. I mean, we have basic assessments we put the fighters through and have metrics of, what fighters should look like in different weight classes, what's good, what's average, what's poor. And then you have to actually watch them train. You have to watch their fight tapes. You have to do all the sort of skill analysis as well. That's one thing too, is you really can't separate somebody's skill in their sport from their, fitness or conditioning numbers. I think that's a mistake people make is, again, just because I put somebody through a conditioning test in the gym doesn't really mean anything if their skill is terrible and they don't know how to actually move correctly and they get in the sport and they're tight and tense and they just don't move well. So we look at the whole picture. I mean, that's where you have to work with a skill coach and you have to have an understanding of what the skills are and how someone should look. And again, if you watch somebody move in their sport, they're tight and they're rigid and you can tell they're just burning through a ton of extra energy than necessary, then that's something you have to address, even if their fitness numbers may look good. So we've been doing it so long now, and I work with Matt Hume, who's really the best in the business, the best in the world. So he can use his own judgment and coach's eye for for assessing how someone's conditioning is going to look just from watching them hit pads and spar and all those sorts of things. So we look at all the different variables. You look at strength, you look at power, you look at their movement potential, you look at their natural pace and ability, you look at their heart rates, their fitness. You really just kind of look at the big picture of what they are as an athlete and then go from there.
Wow. So do you coach coaches now? Is that more of your role or are you still coaching athletes?
No, I mostly coach coaches these days and work on different Projects. Like I said, Lifetime Fitness has been a big project for me.
Yeah.
Developing the software and the technology side is a big thing I do.
Okay.
And then work on, I have a certification course for trainers and really kind of that side is where I spend most of my time.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great segue. Can we talk about technology for a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned is Morpheus the project that you're currently working on right now? Is that your big?
Yeah, Morpheus is a new platform. We launched it back in December and continuing to build that out. So the biggest thing I wanted to do after working with HRV and heart rate variability for a number of years is I think there was a disconnect, and there still is for a lot of people, between what all the data shows and what they need to actually do in the gym. And we had years and years of all this information, and we always get these questions of, well, what does this mean? What do I do with this? And I think you've seen that with people using Fitbits and different trackers of sleep and activity and all these things, HRV even, but really people's understanding of what to do with it's been lacking. So what Morpheus does is looks at all your lifestyle. So it looks at your sleep and your HRV and your training, all these different things, how you feel, your activity. It gives you a recovery score each day, and then based on that recovery score, it'll give you 3 different heart rate zones. Basically, a blue zone to help stimulate recovery if you need it, a green zone to develop conditioning, and a red zone, which is your overload or your max intensity zone. So it gives you specific zones that are appropriate to you each day, and it just helps you get in the right level of intensity depending on what your goals are and what your recovery levels are for that day. So it connects, like I said, basically your lifestyle and your recovery and everything else to what needs to be happening in the gym. And I think that's really where I think the future's fitness is going, is putting all these pieces together in a more integrated way. And then, like I said, just making it more effective and simple for people to realize, hey, today I should push myself to this level of intensity or into this zone versus that zone. And being able to personalize that on a daily basis is really what I've wanted to get towards, because I think that's what's been lacking in fitness is people have this idea of, I'll just go kill myself every day. And sooner or later you realize that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But then what's the answer? I mean, how hard should I push myself today? Most
Right.
people couldn't really tell you that.
Yeah. It's so interesting, man. So I have another podcast called The Fitness Blitz, and I interview, it's a short form, 10 to 15 minute interview, and I interview people from all over the industry, right? The fitness profession. And one of the questions I ask in there is, what piece of technology do you think is going to impact the industry in the next 5 or 10 years? And I can say, I don't know the numbers exactly, but I'll venture out and say at least 20% of the fitness professionals on that say HRV.
Yeah, I mean, it's the single most important metric that we have from a fitness and health and wellness standpoint, because it correlates across such a broad area of both fitness and health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been around for 50 years. I mean, this isn't like some new gimmicky fad that someone just came up with to sell products. I mean, it's been around since the Russians were the first in space. That's what they used it for, was to gauge essentially the stress on their astronauts, and they sent them up into space.
Huh.
So it's been around, forever. And the more they've researched it, the more we've learned about just how important it is and how it correlates to risk of cardiovascular disease, to body composition, to self-control and regulation and diet and smoking and alcohol resistance and all sorts of just different areas that you wouldn't expect, because it's this broad look into the immune system and how our autonomic system functions correlates to a huge number of things in our life, because it's also tied to inflammation. And you essentially see that the system that HRV is measuring is our body's anti-inflammatory system, and there's so much connection between chronic inflammation disease that if you see somebody has high HRV, it essentially means they're better at shutting off stress, they're better at dealing with inflammation and turning it off, and they're ultimately going to have a whole lot better chances of avoiding diseases, of being in shape and having better self-control and all sorts of stuff. So it's a hugely important metric, because it correlates and has got implications in such a broad area.
Yeah. Interesting, man. So do me a favor, Joel, explain HRV to me like I'm 4 years old, because I think there's a lot of people, even with I've been testing it for so long, playing with it. I now use a whoop strap just because it.
I wouldn't do that. It's totally inaccurate. I hate to tell you.
Okay, good. I'm glad I brought it up. I actually stopped using it. I bought it and I used it for a month, and I was like, well, anyway, for one reason.
Yeah, unfortunately, they do a great job of marketing, and they did do a great job of raising money, but I've tested it pretty extensively, and their HRV is about as inaccurate as it gets. So,
What do you recommend?
well, Morpheus, of course, that's my system that measures HRV, but there's other ones out there. People aren't going to use Morpheus. I would say iAthlete. I would say even HRV for training, and some of those that are more clinically based are going to be accurate, which is the first thing you've got to look for if you're going to measure it. Is it needs to be accurate. And the wrist-based device like Whoop they're just not accurate. They just aren't. I mean, I've tested them enough to tell you that they're off significantly most of the time, and I think the way that they teach it is also wrong. But getting back to your question, is essentially what you look at is, in order for your brain to keep you alive, it has to manage a lot of things within the body, right? It has to manage your blood pressure, it has to manage your oxygen levels, it has to manage your temperature, it has to manage essentially all these bodily functions inside to make sure that your body can survive and stay alive. And then at the same time, it has to make sure that those conditions can work to meet different scenarios. So your body basically uses, or the brain uses, these two halves of the nervous system called the sympathetic system, which people know as the fight or flight system. And that system's job is to turn energy production up and to prepare you for fight or flight, right? Cause adrenaline to go up and all these sorts of things. The other half is the parasympathetic system, and that's job is rest and digest and repair and regenerate and all those sorts of things. So, if you're going to go out and sprint down the track, or you're going to go lift weights, the sympathetic system is going to turn on. It's going to produce a bunch more energy. It's going to make you stronger and faster, and it's going to essentially make sure you can go out and work out or do whatever it is you want to do. And it's up to the other half of the system, the parasympathetic system, to store energy and to rebuild tissue and to make your fitness better. And the big words people use all the time they're familiar with is anabolic and catabolic, right? So the sympathetic system is catabolic. It breaks down energy and shoves it into muscles so you can produce more force. The other side, the parasympathetic, is anabolic, and it builds tissues back up and makes you bigger, faster, and stronger, and digest and all those sorts of things. So what you want to see essentially is that those two systems are working properly and they're doing the things they need to do. And HRV is looking at that parasympathetic nervous system. So it's looking at that anabolic side of the equation of energy storage and making sure that your body is actually putting back the energy it needs, and it's rebuilding tissues appropriately, and it's doing the things it needs to do to stay healthy. So what you're looking at essentially is that balance, the anabolic catabolic balance, and you're looking at also inflammation, because when that sympathetic system is on, inflammation goes up. When the parasympathetic system's on, inflammation goes down. And so these two systems work together, like I said, to manage your body, to regulate it, to make sure you can accomplish a variety of things and ultimately stay alive at the end of the day. So when we look at HRV, that's why it correlates to so many areas, because being catabolic constantly and being stressed out and having that sympathetic system turned on isn't a good thing in the long run. It causes lots of problems. And not being able to turn on the parasympathetic system and not being able to rebuild tissues and not being able to be, be able to digest food well, or not be able to regenerate and rebuild tissues you stress is a bad thing. So we're just looking essentially at the tipping point, to the balance between those two systems, and trying to understand how the body is doing its job of regulating itself over time, how well it can meet different situations and stress, and how it's adapting to the environment. So it's like, so that's why it's so interesting to look at HRV, because it tells you, is this person overtraining? Is their body able to recover from the stress of what they're doing in their workout? Is, how much is their life affecting them? And really, that's what you find out is people's lifestyles affect their fitness and their health far more than the workout ever does, because, the workout's an hour a day, the rest of life's the other 23 hours. And it turns out those 23 hours matter a whole lot more than that 1 hour. So when you start looking at data, a lot of times people ultimately start to see just how much sleep and food and alcohol and mental stress and all these things have such a huge impact on their fitness and their health and their wellness, again, far more than the workout often does, to be honest with you. So it's it's a real eye opener for people oftentimes to just to see what a couple nights of poor sleep, or what a week of stress at the office from a deadline, or exam finals, or going through a breakup or whatever, all these things that we deal with in our life affect our autonomic nervous system, and we can see all that in HRV. So it's really fascinating to just basically what you're doing is getting this inner look at your body and how it's handling everything around you.
Yeah, it's so fucking cool. What I love about, I mean, obviously, you've worked with athletes on this, but I'd imagine it's just starting to enter. I mean, I've heard about, I'm starting to hear about this stuff from friends who are kind of like, recreational CrossFitters, but, C-level officers at companies, because they starting to see the benefit of just how they perform in the office place. How are you starting to see a major breakthrough into more of, I guess, lack of a better term, general population for HRV tech?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just look at the number of devices out there, and like you mentioned, Whoop Band. Whoop raised $20+ million initially, and they've raised another, I don't know how many, 40 million or some number I heard the other day. So I mean, they've raised a ton of money because I think that there's enough people out there who do believe that the general public is looking for these sorts of things that can help with, you can not just performing better, but just looking and feeling better and living longer. So there's a need for it. I think the people as a whole have got embraced the idea that personalization and looking at their body is important. I think there just hasn't been a great overall solution for it. And like I said, they raised a lot of money and they've created a product that looks great. It's just unfortunately completely inaccurate at this point. I think the way they're using the data is not great, but I think there's a huge demand for it out there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to put pieces together and making it accessible and easy to use. And I've actually looked at how can we use HRV to help people understand when to make better decisions, because you can even look at it in terms of like, when should I be studying for my exam, or when should I be doing my most difficult work for school, or when should I be making financial decisions, and all that sort of stuff is even tied in there as well, because it's so tied into how the brain functions as a whole that you could literally optimize decision making from HRV as well. So there's lots of different avenues you can go with it that I think are all eventually gonna have some sort of app or device or way to do that.
Yeah. So how do you see, like, with this kind of technology, I'm really seeing a bridge, integration, whatever you want to call it, between like the medical profession, fitness profession, science, because it's going to become intertwined, right? I mean, eventually, like we were talking about people living to 150, 160 years old. How is the medical profession taking this and absorbing as much as like, the coaching or fitness profession? Because I don't know, I'm not in that realm, but I just haven't, from what I've seen, I haven't seen the medical profession really taking it on as maybe like, hey, these are metrics we can track for our patients.
No, I mean, there's actually hundreds of research papers, or even potentially thousands of research papers in HRV in cardiovascular journals and different medical journals. So they've researched it pretty extensively. The systems they're using are, far more expensive, and their clinical and they're usually off ECG leads and all those sorts of things. So, HRV has been used in research and medical profession for many, many years. But yeah, I think you're essentially starting to see, just a breaking down of some of those walls in between all these different, areas of, like I said, fitness and medicine and health and all sorts of things. And you're starting to see more. I think you're starting to see more doctors and more healthcare professionals open to trying to figure out how do we use fitness to prevent all these things versus just treat all of those. And I think as it happens, then you'll see maybe insurance companies more open to letting people use devices or pay for devices, and you're seeing them pay for gym memberships, and you're seeing more medical influence in some of the health areas. So yeah, I mean, I think you'll see over time. I think you'll start seeing more of these things become more pervasive or spread across more of these different areas that have traditionally been separated.
Yeah, interesting. So, I have a bunch of questions on this, but let's put on your your future Joel cap here. Like, where do you see all this heading in let's say 5 years? Because 10 years is really big, but even just five, where do you see all this heading? How mainstream do you think it's going to get? How do you think it's going to change people's lives? Like, what's your vision for it?
I think in the next 5 years, what you're going to start to see is just big data starting to actually provide more solutions and recommendations and make it more personalized fitness. I think is really what I would say the next 5 years look like. I mean, I think we've seen the let's go train in groups of 50 people and do all the exact same stuff day after day and see how that goes. And the reality is it doesn't go great for a lot of people because, fitness does have to be personalized. So I think you'll start to see, we have all this data now. We have HRV, we have activity, we have sleep, we have all this sort of stuff. And that's, one thing Morpheus is looking at is how do we take all this data and give people personalized feedback and give people personalized recommendations? How many hours of sleep do you actually need? How many steps a day do you actually need? I mean, how many minutes of exercise and different intensities are appropriate for you? And being able to give people those personalized recommendations, not based on just what I think is best for you or what you feel at the moment, but what data actually shows. And so I think we're going to see the next, like I said, 3 to 5 years, we can start to use big data to essentially solve some of those problems, at least give people a more personalized roadmap of their fitness and give them more personalized prescriptions of what's appropriate for them on any given day or, just as a whole, and giving people ideas of what types of exercise they're going to respond best to and what foods they respond best to. I think we're just going to go down this personalization path that we'll start to see over the next 3 to 5 years playing out so that people actually have, again, a more personalized roadmap to their own fitness.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a couple thoughts because I've interviewed almost 300 fitness professionals this year. And, and I started talking about this type of topic. A couple of things happen. One, people get super excited and they're like starting to be early adopters, or I get this pushback. They're like, yeah, well, you're forgetting about the community aspect, the human touch. What do you say to that objection of like, hey, are we making it we can make it totally individualized, even, maybe AI can take over the workout programming depending on what they, the feedback gets us. What do you say to people who are a little bit afraid of the technology coming down?
I mean, I don't think it's ever going to, eliminate the human component. Like we're not replacing humans. I think you're just giving people better information. I mean, look at your car. You don't call your friend up and ask how to get from point A to point B. You get on your GPS and you tell it where you want to go and it tells you how to get there. So,
Yeah.
I think that's more what we're looking at is, you're not going to get rid of personal trainers or coaches. You're just going to have coaches and trainers with way more information to make better decisions, right? So if you look at, football coaches, you're not going to get rid of football coaches because an AI system could tell you what the best play to run is ever going to be. I mean, you're still going to let football coaches make decisions. They're just going to have better information about things. So I think it's, again, you're not going to replace the human element. You're just going to give people better information with which to make fundamental decisions about their fitness and their training. So I don't see that really having, I don't see you ever eliminating people. I think you just can give people better tools to work with.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great viewpoint too. So, what should fitness professionals be doing right now to start, integrating this into their practice?
I think the first thing is just be guinea pigs, and that's kind of how I've built a lot of my career is just trying different things. I mean, I got into train combat athletes and learned how to do that because I started training combat sports myself to see what they look like, and I used technology myself since the early 2000s and used HRV for literally that entire last 18 years. So I think at this point, like fitness professionals, need to start using technology themselves and learning how the stuff works and staying up to date on it. And then B, starting to experiment with some of their clients and just seeing how these different tools can help them and make them better coaches. I mean, that's ultimately what technology needs to do is either, help the person who doesn't have a coach and give them guidance, or help a coach, again, make better decisions about his clients and people he works with. And, this is already happening. So if you're an individual trainer and you're not doing this, you're ultimately going to miss out. I mean, I'm working with Lifetime Fitness right now to look at rolling out Morpheus to their 1.2 million members and their 4,000 plus trainers. I mean, this is already happening. This is not something that's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. So
Yeah.
if you're not taking initiative to stay in front of this, you're ultimately going to be left behind, because other people, other gyms, other trainers are going to. And so if you're, sitting there and you have nothing, you have no technology, you don't know how to use it, you know, don't know what to do with the data or what it means, and the trainer down the street is using Morpheus and then some other platform, and they can tell people all this information, you're going to lose clients. You're going to fall behind. It's that simple.
Yeah. I mean, and as you're speaking to, I just think about so many potential applications. I mean, corporate wellness alone, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's tremendous, and just getting people insights into just any insight into their health is tremendous. Most people don't understand how much water they should be drinking. As fitness professionals, we always tend to forget that the large majority of people don't even set their feet into gyms, or scared to death to do it. And this is such an easy access point to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as fitness professionals, part of our problem is we look at other people and wonder why they don't all do the same things that we do. But it's just, people are different. I don't know how to develop. I don't know how to write code, and people sit there and write code and look at us like we're crazy because we don't understand computer software what they do. I mean, it's just you can't expect somebody whose whole life doesn't revolve around fitness to have the same ambitions or the same commitment to the same drive that someone whose entire job is fitness.
Yeah. So, interesting point. So you and I talked about before we started recording about lifespans, right? How technology like this can drastically affect humanity, really overall. But give us some insights, man. What do you see coming down the pipe for that? The potential, just complete game changers for humanity.
Yeah, I mean, basically what it comes down to from the research I've done and people I've talked to is, once you can start to understand the core genes that are responsible for aging, you can essentially turn them off to some extent, and you can slow down the lifespan dramatically. Even so, there's a study right now. I don't know if people are familiar with it. It's called the TAME study, and they're looking at there's a drug called metformin, which is used for diabetics to control glucose more or less. And the studies so far are showing quite a bit of promise in extending lifespan by a fairly decent amount. And this is just a study going on right now. You can look it up, TAME. And I think this is really just the beginning of extending people's lifespan. And a lot of times, once you open those floodgates, you start to realize what are the actual DNA mechanisms and what are the actual, little messengers that are telling our cells to age. You can turn those off. You can extend lifespan significantly. A lot of the research that I've, again, kind of read and discussed things with, they think probably next, it's hard to say exactly, but I'd say 15, 20 years, maybe 25 years, you're going to be able to extend people's lifespan, significantly. They call it health span is a better way to look at it. Not just staying alive, but actually being healthy. They're going to be able to extend that into the hundreds, without question, because you can essentially turn off the big mechanisms that cause ourselves to age, because aging is basically nature's birth control, really. I mean, it's what it is. We're designed to slowly fall apart, and the older our cells get, the worse they get replicating, and the worse they get replicating, the more likely they are to, ultimately get cancer or have some sort of defect that causes some sort of disease that kills us. And if you can turn that process off, you can slow down aging dramatically. So I think we're going to have some really interesting, implications in 15, 20, 25 years when it becomes possible to, extend someone's lifespan or health span double what it is now. And it's going to be interesting to see, how all that plays out just from a societal standpoint of food and jobs and population size and everything else, how that's going to work. But I think those are questions we're going to have to grapple with in the next, like I said, I would say probably 15, 25 years when some of these technologies become viable and accessible. But even just this first study, if metformin can extend lifespan by even, I don't know, 5 or 8 years, even that's got a huge significant implication. And that's something that's a simple drug that anyone can go online and order right now. If that extends your lifespan, that's just the first part of what will ultimately become a huge industry of extending people's lives and keeping them healthy. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that silence is my mind exploding at this point. Because Dude, I mean, just the ethical, God, so many things we're gonna have to deal with. And it's cool. I mean, it's cool. I'll be right around 60, if we project that those timelines are accurate, right around 60 when that conversation really is in full throttle. But we already have too many people on the planet. Or at least we're misusing, our resources quite a bit. So, I mean, this is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, like, does the technology to manage those resources more effectively, develop at the same rate as some of this stuff? I mean, hopefully, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble because you're overpopulate the hell out of everywhere. But, if we can get our hands, get clean energy and renewable energy sources, and we can figure out ways to, clean up pollution, and we can do all those sorts of things at the same time, we can develop technology that helps us live longer, then maybe we'll be okay. If not, then I don't know, maybe we're all screwed. But it's coming. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, look up, like I said, go look up the TAME, TAME.
I will.
It's metformin and longevity study. It's already clinical trial right now, and so far the results seem to be promising. And that's literally just a single drug that's being targeted to help people live longer and stave off disease. So if that shows a positive outcome, that really just kind of, like I said, starts the floodgates from opening. Because if that works, then we can figure out why it worked even more, and they'll target even more specific drugs to do the same thing at a higher level, and just keep going. I mean, there's big money in it, right? I mean, who wouldn't pay to stop the aging process and live an extra 50 years or 75 years and stay healthy the entire time? I mean, everybody on the face of the earth would pay for that. Then it becomes a question of how affordable is it, right? Who can buy it? Maybe it's super expensive and only the wealthy can afford it. Then you've got a whole other set of problems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's opens up Pandora's box as far as ethical areas are concerned.
Yeah, then it turns into that movie with Matt Damon. What is it, Elysium or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's not super far-fetched. Who knows?
Oh, it's wild. Geez, this is gonna be like, I'm gonna wake up at 3 a.m. and just start thinking about this shit. That's what.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's lots of stuff out there. Start researching it.
Yeah, man. So, if people want to get involved, maybe I'm a fitness professional. Can they just go to Morpheus.com, or where do they go to get more?
Trainwithmorpheus.com is where that's at. So you can go to my main site, 8weeksout.com, where I've got all my articles and basic stuff. And then trainwithmorpheus.com is where they can learn more about Morpheus itself.
Awesome. And just out of curiosity, how do you guys price it out? Because I'm honestly, I'm probably going to get off this right now and buy one.
Yeah. So we have basically, it comes with a recovery band that's 147, and that allows you to take your recovery measurement each day. And then the recovery band can be used to work out, but we generally speaking recommend people use a Bluetooth heart rate monitor, just because the heart rate monitors and the chest strap are always going to be more accurate. Morpheus itself is a band that goes around your forearm or your leg to measure your recovery, just because it's way more convenient. Most people don't like using the chest strap every day to measure HRV and recovery. So you get the recovery band 147. There's no annual subscription or monthly subscription. That's just what it is. Awesome. And then the cool thing is I'm developing some programs right now that'll essentially help you use Morpheus to improve your conditioning or reset your recovery and eventually develop strength programs. So what I'm basically doing now is, like I said, since Morpheus can measure your recovery, it can give you heart rate zones. I want to help people put that into actual training programs. So I'm working on a 90-day or a 12-week conditioning program that'll be built around using Morpheus, and we'll call it metamorphosis. And it's the next step of, okay, how do you use all this data to personalize your program and get better results? And that's what we're also ultimately working on right now.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, you just got at least one new client for sure.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
One at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Joel, this has been great, man. I really enjoyed, this information. I appreciate you coming in and really explaining it to me like I'm 4 years old. It's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Hey, fitness fans, don't leave yet. It's your host, Eric Malzone, and I have a quick favor to ask. Actually, 3 favors. So, number 1, if you're a fan of our show, I ask you to do something that takes under 3 minutes. Go to iTunes, please, and subscribe to our show. Please, please, please. It means so much to us. It's so important. And then give us a favorable review. We would really, really appreciate it. And I can't tell you how much it means and helps us out. So I know it takes 2 minutes of your day, and it means a lot to us. So please do that. Number 2, go to our YouTube channel, our Fitness Marketing Alliance, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel there. Number 3, if you like this episode or any of the episodes that we've released, share it on social. That's huge. That's a big deal for us. And we put a lot of work into these episodes, trying to give you great, actionable content for the fitness industry. So that would mean a lot. And that's it. So we have some big plans coming up for this show. I'll be talking about that in the next couple episodes. But thank you so much for listening. It means so much. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I love to hear from everybody. Eric, ERIC at fitnessmarketingalliance.com.